Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Irina-san. I'm very excited to be here with these four distinguished panelists to discuss some of the issues that came up in the previous presentations about technology, about partnerships, and about innovation. My name is Robin Lewis. I'm the co-founder and director of Social Innovation Japan. And with that, I would like to open up the discussion with a slightly difficult question. So we have four very diverse panelists, and I would like to ask, while you introduce yourself, can you please tell us what does innovation mean to you? So I'm going to start off with Ono-san over there in the far corner. So I'm going to pass, Tanaka-san has the mic.
Okay, so hi, my name is Yuki Ono. I'm from Deloitte Thomas Venture Support. So our company is helping the innovation consulting company. So our client is mainly government and the big corporation and the startup. So by connecting those players, we are accelerating the open innovations, mainly in Japan. So I'm in charge for the global expansion division. I'm helping those three sectors, especially like let's say governmental institution. I work closely with the Ministry of Economy, JETRO, JICA, Tokyo government, those kind of players in Japan, and of course I work a lot with the global public sector as well. And for the corporation, I help them global sourcing, and most of all, I help a Japanese startup global expansion business. And to me, the innovation means I spend most of my time in global, overseas, and it's always my passion to become the bridge between Japan and the world, and I think innovation is the main key to make it happen. So that's why I'm here today.
Hi everyone, my name is Satoshi Akita. Yeah, I'm CEO of Washa. What Washa is doing is we're providing kind of off-grid solution, especially in the people in African continent. Then let me explain what we do briefly. There's 600 million people have no electricity access in the African continent. That's almost 60% of their whole population. Then normally there are off-grid solution industry there, but most of them are providing solar home system. Maybe some of you know. Those companies are now focusing on people who have some amount of money. Then they provide like a kind of a small solar system for their individual houses. Then they'll ask the people to pay little by little. But still, they reach a very small amount of the whole those population. Then most of them, they don't have a stable income there, so they can't afford to purchase the solution. Then that's why we are focusing on those low-income customers in the off-grid area by providing LED lanterns as a rental service. Then if they have small amount of money on that time, they can come to our kiosk. We are working with kiosk, a small retail shop there. Then if they have like 20 cents, in Japanese like 25 yen, they can come to our kiosk and they can get our LED lantern for just like 24 hours. That's our solution. Then for me, innovation means there's something can proceed our daily life to the next step. So like as something can help people to get some more money or save some amount of money or something like that. That's for me. Thank you.
Innovation is improving quality of life and bringing new value to people.
Yeah. Okay. That's why we are trying to become like to produce such kind of an innovative solution.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. My name is Haruna from Rakuten. How many of you on the floor know Rakuten? Can you raise your hand? Okay, good. I'm in Japan. So I won't explain much about Rakuten, but Rakuten, we call ourselves a global innovation company, and we've tried to empower the society through innovation for the last 20 years. I belong to the Chief Executive Innovation Office, and I'm in charge of developing a group-wide strategy and also group-wide alliances. In terms of innovation, I've been working on open innovation projects for the company for the last about 2 years, and started up 2 accelerator programs for Rakuten. One is the Rakuten Accelerator powered by Techstars. That is a US-based accelerator company based in Singapore, bringing in about 10 tech startups from around the world and get them all come to Singapore and work with Rakuten to find open innovation opportunities and POC potentials. Another one which I actually want to emphasize today is the Rakuten Social Accelerator. Sorry, the name is very similar because I founded both of them. But the Rakuten Social Accelerator is a very similar concept where Rakuten wants to partner with outside startups, but in a social contribution space. So companies, actually Washa was one of the companies in our batch 1, so I'm very happy to be here and meet Akira-san again. But basically the concept is to connect Rakuten employees with social entrepreneurs outside and try to bring Rakuten's technology and asset to empower these social entrepreneurs. So yeah, innovation to me, it's something that makes me really excited, maybe similar to what Ono-san is saying. So innovation, it's a simple wow, right? You see some very interesting new technology or application of technology into business, and it's really awesome. You just get so excited. And I feel innovation really makes people passionate. So Rakuten employees, when they see these innovative new initiatives, they get really excited and want to work further to make that, basically amplify that, impact of innovation. So yeah, that's what innovation means to me. Thank you.
Well, you've already heard from me, so you know who I am. I won't introduce myself again, but innovation to me is finding new and creative ways to solve some of the greatest challenges of humanity.
And a round of applause. Okay, so with that opening, I'd like to now discuss where does innovation come from? So we've discussed various the different definitions of innovation. So I'd like to ask this question: from where and how does your organization identify innovations? In other words, where are the seeds of innovation? So I started off with Ono-san, so I'm going to go the reverse way now. So Rob, if you can shed some light on that.
Right. So I explained some of this already, but where we go for ideas is both inside the organization as well as outside. From inside the organization, we want to be sure we are finding the right problems. So we make sure that every innovation that we use is associated with a problem that we face at the field level in the organization. We also look to the organization for the ideas on solving the problems. So we look for internal innovators inside. And we have 17,000 people who work in the World Food Program, so we get a lot of good ideas from the team inside. But then we look also outside for ideas that can come from startups, they can come from large companies, they can come from academia, they can come from NGOs and other sources. And that's why each year we have a number of innovation challenges that are public, and anyone can apply to the challenge, and we will consider the ideas. And in the last 3 years, we have around 4,000 ideas that have been collected by the Accelerator in our challenges. So we have received a nice pipeline of ideas, and we're continuously looking for more.
Just out of interest, so you mentioned academia, you mentioned public sector, private sector. Can you please raise your hand if you are from the private sector working for a company or a startup? Okay, so that's about maybe half. What about any government stakeholders? So that's about 10% in this group here. Any academia, students, postgraduate, PhD? No? Okay. And non-profit civil society organizations? Okay. So actually, the vast majority of this audience is from either the corporate sector or involved in startups. So that's a good range of people attending. So just to touch upon that. So next, I'd like to go to Tanaka-san.
Sure. I probably sound like copying what Rob said, but coming from a large organization, we also get seeds of innovation from both inside and also outside of our company. Inside, we have a system called R-Pitch. It's basically an entrepreneur incubation kind of program where we try to find interesting seeds of new businesses and try to get these people through a sort of a serious fundraising process, like something like that a startup probably encounter when they try to raise money from VCs. We have a very similar process, but inside the company, targeting entrepreneurs inside Rakuten. So we do this on annual basis. We're actually opening up our applications right now and getting in lots of interesting seeds of businesses. This is our second batch, and from our last batch, we already kind of incubated one service which already went live. It's in beta right now, called Rakuten Pasha, which is in the media, ad tech sort of business area. So that's how we try to, find interesting seeds of businesses, innovation from a bottom-up kind of approach. That's inside our company. Outside the company, again, I already mentioned about the 2 accelerator programs that I started last year. And basically, the idea is to find interesting, innovation ideas, interesting startups that already has this, really cool technology or idea, but doesn't have the capacity to deploy that and really make impact into the world. So that's where Rakuten comes in and try to support them with the resources that we have, the membership that we have, with them, potentially the fund that we can provide through investment or grant, and try to empower them to actually, multiply the impact that they're trying to create on their own. So that's how we kind of, try to pull seeds of innovation into the company and try to kind of push that into the world. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Okay, I think in my case, I'd better explain our experience, maybe not generally coming from the organization. So in our case, our solution, if our solution is innovative solution, as coming from the idea of the local entrepreneurs actually, that solution idea, can I say? This company is founded in 2013, but before 1 year, in 2012, I was working as a private consultant. Then I met one professor in the University of Tokyo. Then he has a technology, actually. And he believed that is an innovative technology, but that was just a patent. Then no one using that patent for the business. That's why he asked me to develop some new business. Then we developed some business idea. Then we went to Kenya and Tanzania to test that business model is work or not. But actually that was not really working. We did some presentation to many people in those 2 countries, but no one said that's okay. So we thought that's not really working, and that idea was not meet the needs of the people in that field. But this one Kenyan entrepreneur sent us the email after that visit. Then he had an idea. It's very similar to our business model now. Then he had an idea, but he didn't have enough resources to develop the hardware and the software by himself. So he asked me to develop that solution with him. So that's the beginning of our solution. So I don't know, maybe there are many cases, but in our case, technology was just the piece of our solution. Then the innovation was coming from the idea of our customer.
So you applied an existing technology to a different context and localized it.
Yes.
Is that right? Very interesting. Okay, thank you very much. And Ono-san, next.
Okay, so now I realize how hard to answer the question after the three people, right? So my answer would be like kind of combining. But I think I totally agree that I think it's very important to know what's the local situation, especially with the local area and the industry needs. More we know about reality, then we can come up with better solutions. But most of the Japanese companies, they say, do the product approach, means creating something good and see how the global market take it. It usually doesn't work in that way. So most of the time, we should do like more like a market-in approach, means clarify the problem, local problem first, and then solve with the Japanese service or technologies, which just you kindly mentioned. And as a part of the Deloitte group, because most of the big corporation locally or like conglomerates is our clients, means we know what's their pain or like what's their problem, and then of course we have a better understanding of the Japanese technology and startup. So it's just a matter how we match up. And then of course we've been helping over 200 Japanese startups or SMEs with global expansion. So we have enough know-how, platform, and the information to accelerate the business overseas. So that's, I think, how it usually happens.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to now move on to sharing your personal experiences in your various roles. So the first question is for Rob. What is your experience in managing innovation projects and incorporating innovative ideas into your operations on the ground? And if you could also touch upon what are some of the challenges and the opportunities that you see in your work, that would be great.
Right, and by now we're getting quite a lot of experiences on different innovations being applied to our work. So there's not one that I would talk about as such, but we're seeing that even a technology like blockchain or technologies like artificial intelligence actually have ways to incorporate into our programs, even if it seems like we're working in contexts that are very unsophisticated. Sometimes we have infrastructure issues around that, but a lot of times it is really about making sure that you're focused on the right problem and that you have clarity of whatever the solution is, you are staying clear on the problem. That's the most important thing. The biggest constraints, I would say, are things like convincing others in the organization that this is a good thing to do, because we're not really set up as a public sector organization. We're not always set up for, in general mindset, for everybody to be as interested in innovation as I am, or my team. So we are kind of a normal organization. So a lot of the challenge around implementing is to convince people on the ground that this is something worth experimenting. What I have to say, once you experiment and once you have some evidence of it working, then we're very fast to grab onto it, and we run with it very quickly. But it's really getting to that sort of over that barrier that we're taking a bit of risk and doing something differently. So those would be some of the constraints and experiences.
So some of the challenges are changing mindsets and kind of that organizational change is one that you experience. And I saw Tanaka-san, you were nodding furiously there. So would you like to add from your experience on that note?
Sure. I mean, we have the exactly same challenge when we try to promote innovation inside the company. You know, like all of you, we all have our daily work that we have to work on and we have to deliver. So there's usually not much room left to do something new. And that's what we are encountering, especially when I'm doing the Rakuten Accelerator, the Singapore one, where we try to match up businesses to find innovation opportunities with global startups. However, I found something very interesting when I was doing the Rakuten Social Accelerator. So this was more like a pro bono kind of setup where where you find passionate employees inside the company who really want to work with people outside the company who's trying to solve social issues. So that program was like really fast and quick. You know, once we started it up, people were really passionate and contributing and making progress and making something happen. So what I learned from that experience was you have to find these key men inside the organization who's really passionate about innovation and want to promote things, regardless of their daily jobs and what they're told by their boss. They have this passion inside themselves.
It's about finding those key people who can help to change the mindset. Is that right? Okay. And so I saw you both nodding there, but I'm gonna skip to a different question. In terms of the opportunities and challenges from a Japanese startup and corporate perspective, what do you see as the major challenges and opportunities for Japanese companies and Japanese startups in specifically developing context, whether it's Africa or elsewhere? So I'd like to start off with Akita-san, because you have a lot of experience in Africa and in Tanzania and so on.
Challenge for Japanese companies and startups.
And opportunities.
And opportunities. Okay. There are many challenges.
Okay.
But the biggest challenge is managing people there. Because to deploy your solution there, not only solutions, the products, something, we need to work with the local people. Then we need to motivate them. Sometimes we need to train them to become our evangelist. So, but there are differences. Just not like, the Japanese company, mainly in Japanese company, there are like many Japanese, a few foreign people. So, like they believe, like everyone take the same average of the education. But for example, in Tanzania, like most of the people just graduate elementary school, then the university students are very, very, very few. So if you need to work with the people who just graduated elementary school, we need to train them like how to speak to people or something like that. So I think that's the biggest challenge, to make something, we need to work with people. So I think that's also the challenge to not only in the developing country, but that's the biggest challenge for the company. But there are also opportunities, like if we can solve that challenge, I mean, if we can work together with the people nicely, I think the demand is there, like the market is very huge. So yeah, there's a challenge, but also that's an opportunity.
So people are the challenge, but it's also an opportunity to
Yes.
change the education system and kind of really develop the next generation. Is that
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And Ona-san, what about you for challenges and opportunities for Japanese corporates and stuff?
Okay, so Tanaka-san mentioned about people, so I'm more focusing on market now. In general, of course, most of people are aware that the infrastructure is still not organized. So let's say most of the people don't have bank account, most of the people don't have even PC. That gives a huge room for the technology like a fintech or like a mobile fast technology. For example, like in Rwanda, they just announced that they will become a POC hub. Means POC stands for proof of concept. So they do the deregulation to attract the global corporation to do the run the POC in Rwanda. So I think that's possible to have like a reverse innovation case out of the successful POC case, and possibly re-import to the developed countries. So that could be like a one successful case. But I think that we have to be careful that even though like mobile shift is happening over there, doesn't mean they are all using a smartphone, or like maybe like there's a lot of problem with the transmitter waves. There's a lot of local rules we have to know beforehand. So I think most of for our Japanese company, the Africa is still far, and it's always hard to find the local right partners, like he mentioned, because of the difference of the business practices. So I think it's important to know what's the international organization like WFP is doing, like a user brand, user network, know how to accelerate to have a secure initial approach.
It's about, again, finding the right local partner and making sure that things go smoothly from the beginning. Okay. Yes, please.
I just like to make a comment on that because that's exactly what we find and what I hear from the startups that we work with. And we have not worked very much yet with Japanese startups, so it's something common, not just for Japanese businesses, it's also in many other places. What we hear is that one of the biggest challenges is understanding and navigating the operating environment. And that is where organizations like the World Food Programme and UN agencies that are on the ground, we can actually help with that. Because if we're pursuing the same objective, which is the SDGs, we should be assisting each other to do that navigation of the operating environment, which is something we have, but we don't have the expertise. So we need the expertise and the innovations of startups, and then we can offer the field network and the relationship with the government and the knowledge of the operating environment.
And Rob, you mentioned when we were talking before this session that you were pleasantly surprised at how engaged the corporate sector in Japan was with the SDGs. Do you see a big opportunity for partnerships between WFP and other UN entities with Japanese corporates?
Absolutely. I have been very pleasantly surprised this week to see how much interest there is in the SDGs, in the corporate sector in particular. And that tells me that we are, as a global community, we are starting to point in the right direction for aligning the interests of, it's not just you're focused on social problems or you're focused on business problems. It's actually, we're all should be focused on both in a way, because the solutions that are going to lead to the end of the, or to achieving the SDGs must be sustainable economically as well. So it is important that we find ways that business can be incorporated into the places where we work that are going to also then provide services for people to allow them to get out of poverty, out of hunger, gender equality, all of the SDGs. So this is something that it gives me a lot of encouragement that particularly the corporate sector here in Japan is very interested in that.
Actually, that segues perfectly into the next question for our Japanese panelists. Have you seen any innovative ways of doing business, or any particularly innovative business models in emerging contexts, whether Africa or elsewhere? So maybe Ono-san, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think again the corresponding to the local needs and then something that existing business cannot solve, but by applying the innovative solution is the key, I think. So I see, for example, one company is providing the blood by drone for the pregnant women because in certain area of Africa there's a high death rate because of for the pregnant women when they do the birth, they lose a lot of blood. And then there's many reasons of that, but a couple reasons, maybe like logistics or like secure storage of the blood. But because they are solving the problem by carrying the blood by drone, that could be like a great sample. And then now they are not only focusing on blood, but they are expanding to like other medical equipment like a vaccine. So I think those business models is a huge potential. Another model I've been thinking of is like, but they are providing the telemedicine supported by AI and chatbot. They are a UK-based company. It's a huge in UK, but now they are using those technologies to solve the local problems. Of course, in Africa, there's a lot of people cannot commute to the hospital, cannot have a doctor, so using their service, they know what's going on with the body. So there are now 500 medical examination daily right now. So that's kind of really changing the world. The last one I could think of is I see the similarity with the previous slides, but Mebio is the company name. They are providing the kind of sheet, the hydrogel sheet, which for the agricultural needs, which kind of allows very severe circumstances like a desert, like a consolidated soil, concrete. So they are already implementing the service in SEA, SEA and I think somewhere, Southeast Asia, and they already patented in 120 countries. So like those are the really good sample, like solving the local needs, but like a local existing business cannot solve, but because technology solve for their local pain. So I think that's a great example of that.
Right. And you work with many Japanese startups, right? And you help them to expand overseas. Now, Washa is a great example of course, a Japanese startup that's doing big things in other countries in Africa. Can you think of any successful case studies other than Washa where startups from Japan are successfully introduced into other markets?
Okay, that's a good question. One company called Dreamin, it's a fintech-based company. They are providing like a kind of because there's a country who want to get paid daily, but that's a lot of things that they have to combine with the bank data and like working data. They are successfully implemented like several countries so far, and I think they are now looking for the African market as well. Another one I could think of is a company called GMS, which is a global mobility services. They are running the POC in Philippines. Services like they are basically providing the device and they just put into the car. And the people in Philippines cannot really afford a car because they cannot make a loan out of it. But because using their devices, if they keep paying the money, they keep using the car. But if they stop paying the money, the car automatically stops. So they are working with a local like an insurance company or like a local bank to like do the POC. And now it's I think over 10,000 cars actually running in Philippines. So I think that's also a good example of the reverse innovation case of the Japanese startup.
Very interesting. Tanaka-san, what about yourself? Have you seen any particularly interesting business models in emerging countries at all?
Interesting business model. So I can introduce one company from Rakuten Accelerator Batch 1 called Ant Global. So business model-wise, it's nothing really new. It's a microfinance kind of company where they provide very small amount of lending to low-income people. But the way they create credit for people is quite interesting. So Japan is a country where everyone has their credit score, right? So no one really has issues in finding, hey, is this person can really pay the money back or not? But in countries, this is a Mongolian company, by the way, and in Mongolia, usually people don't know if this guy sitting over there is, can he pay the money back or not? So what they do is they use the technology to analyze the move of the geolocation based on smartphones and try to figure out what this person's daily activities look like and try to create credit scores based on that. So it sounds really bizarre, but like if this person runs from from one point to another every day, it looks like this person is actually working in an office and therefore has a steady kind of income. Another case is, if he's driving very fast, then maybe this guy's a taxi driver, so therefore he may have slightly fluctuating income, something like that. I mean, it's really, I still don't fully understand how the algorithm works, but the fact is they get a very high repayment rate of over 95%. So apparently they're successful in Mongolia, and now they're trying to go into other emerging markets like Philippines and Myanmar. And where Rakuten comes in is Rakuten has a company called Viber, which is a line kind of messaging app, which is quite strong in emerging countries, including Southeast Asia. So we're trying to partner with them to try to kind of get their product into these markets by supporting their marketing. So we're in POC phase for that.
And that was from the Social Accelerator program?
That was not from the social one, but the other accelerator. Sorry, it's confusing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Akita-san, what about yourself in terms of any particularly interesting or innovative ways of doing business that you've seen other than Washa? or you can talk about Washa, but
there are many. But, okay. in Africa, I saw the news, but one is a Blanche. Maybe some of you knows. It's a, I think, Silicon Valley based startup, but they are providing kind of microfinance, but not really microfinance. It's a consumer finance service for the people doesn't have the credit. Then the business model is they develop the application for smartphone. Then that application will ask you to provide all of your information in the smartphone, like a history of short message and the history of like a WhatsApp message, and also the number of the people in your address book and everything. Then they analyze, like if you send like this message, like this word in that message to like this man, maybe you are trustful or something, maybe is a kind of like AI-based solution. Then that AI will quickly calculate, like you can get like this kind of money just like now. Then so if you agree to provide your all information to them, they will quickly analyze them, like they will provide them like very small amount. Then if they can pay back on by the deadline, their credit will be improved.
So it's using AI to track and also monitor the payback
Yes.
of microfinance.
Yeah. Then they raised like more than 100 million USD
Wow.
last week, I think.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so that's very huge and very innovative.
And as you see all of these, I mean, of course, you're very experienced in Tanzania and other neighboring countries. What's next specifically for Washa? Is there any big challenge, the next kind of horizon for you?
Horizon. Okay. One, you mean the next product or
Product
the
or the
service?
next big goal?
Okay,
or
that's e-commerce. Actually, yeah, which is developed with Rakuten in the social accelerator program. But now, as I said, we are now working with the kiosks, the small shops in Tanzania. Then now it becomes 1,000. Then it becomes 2,500 by the end of this year. So by utilizing that, the kiosk network, we are now thinking to provide something new to our end users. Then that is a kind of like an application, and also the web-based dashboard, which is like a Rakuten Ichiba. So we ask like the company if the company is interested in selling like a sample project with our local network. Like the company, also like a Japanese company, can just like register their product on that website, the dashboard. Then we will introduce that products to our end users through our network.
So Rakuten's the perfect partner for
Yes,
that, right?
definitely.
Okay. We look forward to seeing that happening in the near future. And Rob, I'd like to ask, I mean, you must see so many fascinating business models, ideas in the field and so on. Is there anything, what's the idea that gets you most excited right now in terms of what you're doing?
Oh, okay, I wasn't expecting that question. That's a good question, and there's a number. Some of them are adaptations of business models we see very successful in other parts of the world, moving into kind of emerging countries. There's a Nigerian company called Hello Tractor that is like Uber for tractors, and so you have a mobile-based platform that allows you to book tractor time, and so for farmers who can't afford their own tractor, of course, they can borrow one for a while. So very sharing economy. And there's another company named Cold Hubs that also uses a sharing economy model for cold storage. So if you're a vegetable trader or a farmer or something like that, you can actually they set up solar-powered cold refrigeration units, and you can pay for one night of refrigeration. And so it prevents, or it means that you don't have to buy a fridge. People can't afford that kind of equipment anyway. And then we see lots of the kind of credit scoring type models, looking at how for people like small farmers who actually can use financing to purchase their seeds and fertilizers in order to increase production, but don't have that availability right now. It's lots of companies trying to find new ways to extend credit, and so some are things like looking at psychometric profiles. Others are looking at satellite imagery and kind of being able to geolocate your land and kind of help using predictive weather modeling and things like that. And then lots of approaches with artificial intelligence, like predictive flood mapping and disaster prevention kinds of systems. Just a few. There's many
I feel
more.
like you can go on for a long
Yes,
time with that
yes.
one. Okay. And I'd like to now switch over to, having heard the ideas and the technologies and so on that you're interested and most excited about. I'd like to talk about the theme of partnerships, because that was something that both you and Christoph mentioned. And of course, SDG 17 is partnerships with the goals. And in terms of the gap, there seems to be a very large investment gap as well, right? Something like $2.5 trillion annually that needs to be invested to achieve the SDGs by 2030. That means there must be more partnerships between private sector and public sector and so on. And so I'd like to ask, perhaps starting with Tanaka-san, what is the role of different stakeholders, public sector and private sector, in partnerships, and what does a strong partnership look like between public and private sector?
Between public and private sector. So the partnership that I've been working on is mainly with startups and corporate like Rakuten. So I have to kind of use my imagination to kind of think, what roles each, the public sector and corporates like Rakuten will play. But I think the strength of public sectors is they can go to the most, in terms of ROI, very low kind of countries where corporates really hesitate to go into. So I'm now in charge of Africa business development, but really struggling to convince the management to invest into these regions. Because from business standpoint, there's a lot of money that you can make in these already developed countries, and there's a lot of risk where if you want to go into emerging countries, even though the growth rate is definitely very high and there's a lot of potential, the risk factor kind of comes in a lot when especially Japanese companies have to make decisions. Even companies like Rakuten, which is not really a typical kind of Japanese company, we struggle to make the decision to go into these really emerging countries with lots of risks. So if the public sector can provide some kind of comfort or a reduce of risk when going into these emerging markets, corporate will feel very kind of secure and will be willing to kind of jump in and test new solutions into these emerging markets. One example that I can give with Rakuten is we are now running a POC, proof of concept project in Rwanda with the support of JICA, and that is actually a very good case of corporate and public partnership where we provide the technology and business ideas, and they provide the local support and some funding to actually make that POC happen. So that kind of partnership to mitigate risk for corporate partners would be ideal from my standpoint.
So risk mitigation, risk aversion, these are key areas that you have to overcome to convince people to make those investments. Okay, thank you. And I'd like to switch over to Akita-san. With the same question, so between, you also work with government stakeholders, with private sector. What's a strong partnership to you between those two?
It's a difficult question to answer. Now we're working with, some of our stakeholders, government institutions. One is JICA, and also one is Development Bank of Japan. And also, that's a VC, but VC based on the University of Tokyo is the biggest investor. And also some private company is our shareholder. So there's like several kind of. Then their interest is different. So, and as a startup, to work with such a large-scale Japanese company and the government institutions and the VC, the challenge is, how can I say, to integrate their interest into the one like topic, like how to solve the issue on the ground or something. But sometimes like there are different interests, so it takes time to conclude the conclusion. But strong partnership. But I think can I say? Sorry for taking time. But like, you need to talk with them. You need to understand each other.
So it's communication and also understanding the different interests. I think actually everyone mentioned here understanding the problem as well, right? So it's understanding the problem and also understanding the interest of the different people involved to try and bring a cohesive plan to the project. Okay. Thank you very much. We can dig into more detail in the Q&A.
Yeah.
And Ono-san?
So I guess 2 points. The one, finding the local big corporation who has enough local sales channel. So like a issue-based startup succeed to grow their business rapidly because they had an alliance with NAPSers, like Africa Internet Group. Like that's an important key to accelerate. But in terms of the difference between public and private sector, I think law are quite different. So like developing countries entry, usually the initially comes to the public sector, like WFP, do this kind of seminar to educate, what's going on, and then maybe provide a few funds to do the initial approach, smooth the initial approach. But it's not enough, and then because government or like a public sector cannot take too much risk, so then it comes to private sector because we need to take risk to make money. So because of those approach, we can build a successful case. Then that's private sector work. Then it go to the public sector again to make pick up the elements of what's the successful points. Let's say maybe it could be the information, could be the know-how, could be the resources, and picking up those elements to make it more like a governmental policy or could be a bigger opportunity. So it's not gonna be a one-time things, but it could be more sustained to build a bridge between developing countries.
I see. So again, it's a key word there is risk and trying to manage that between the different parties. And Rob, I'd like to ask you your opinion on that as well.
Right, and I'll be quick because I did speak about it before, but I mean, the first thing is that I strongly believe we cannot achieve the SDGs without these partnerships. So that means we need to make it work one way or the other. And I think that when we align as different communities, different stakeholders, on the problem we're trying to solve and the objectives we're trying to achieve, it takes a lot of talking, a lot of working out the different interests. It is possible. I think in terms of concrete partnerships, organizations like the World Food Program, we have also colleagues here from High Commissioner for Refugees and UNDP. We can provide that kind of knowledge on the ground. We also have our existing relationships with governments who are very important stakeholders in these kinds of partnerships. And we also, and then we need to have the kind of that knowledge base and expertise that comes from startups and innovation. And we need the support of large corporates as well, who are willing to come in and partner with that. Sometimes it's investing in the startups, sometimes it's looking at how to adapt their local operations or international business models and bring them locally to have better impact. There's lots of different ways to do it, but I believe that we can and we must do it.
Thank you very much. And on that, I know we're just about to go over time. I'd like to give each panelist 30 seconds just to end on a final message. Robbie mentioned that hunger is on the rise. There's 821 million people who are currently hungry or have hunger. And so what I'd like to finish with all this opportunity to finish with a strong message. So if you have a final thing that you'd like to say, I'd like to start from Ono-san. One final message for the group. No pressure.
Okay, so I think just give this opportunity to give the advice for who is thinking about developing countries. But I think first of all, it's kind of reframe, but understand what's the local real needs, and then find the real right partner to do the POC, and then use the international organization like WFP to accelerate the business. So those are the three keywords to do the business, especially in the developing countries.
Thank you very much. And Akita-san?
Yes, it's a general message, but like normally the Japanese people think like have and do and be process is that like you need to get some like knowledge. Then like if you do something, you can be someone. But I think that's the opposite. Like you need to be someone first. So you need to do something. So you need to get some like knowledge in the finally. So like when you talk about like going to the developing country to develop some new business, like I met many Japanese business person in like Tanzania or like African country, but they normally say like we are not ready, we don't have enough knowledge. But just the message to the Japanese company: just go there, just do it, just start something. Maybe it's just a small step. That's fine, but please go there. Then you need to meet someone there. You can find something. That's the message.
So if anyone would like to do work with Washa, then please speak to Akita-san later on in Tanzania. And Tanaka-san?
Sure. I have a very specific message. Through my experience with Rakuten Social Accelerator, I really feel open innovation is possible, and also very important, as you said, partnership is important. So we're actually opening up for batch 2 of Rakuten Social Accelerator right now. The application will close on April 22nd, so very soon. We're looking for interesting, innovative ideas, social entrepreneurs who's really passionate to take the service to a global level. So please utilize Rakuten's resources, and we're looking for people to apply. Again, the deadline is on April 22nd. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That's
Rob,
good program.
final remarks?
My message is to the Japanese business and startup communities, which is Japan has changed the world in the past decades, unquestionably, with creativity, knowledge, and expertise that has come from here. So let's keep doing that, and let's not leave anyone behind. Let's make sure that we are extending that game-changing, that life-changing knowledge and innovation to every person in the world, especially those who are most vulnerable.
Thank you very much. So please give our panelists a warm round of applause. And on that note, I believe Ono-san from Deloitte Tohmatsu Venture Support has to unfortunately leave us. And so we'll go into a Q&A session now. And first, we'd like to start off with 3 questions that have been brought up on Slido. If you'd like to stay, you can stay. Okay, what does that have? So please give Ono-san a round of applause. Thank you very much. So we're going to look into these questions, and then once we've covered these, we will open to the floor. So that's just the overall flow. I'll start with the first one, which is for our 3 remaining panelists, which is: how do you identify partner corporates to work together? Or how can we start discussions on possible collaborations with you? So do we have any volunteers who'd like to take that question first? Tanaka-san?
Yeah, just come to me after this session, and we can exchange name cards and get started from here. I mean, seriously, you just have to find, some kind of きっかけってなんていうんですかね?
Opportunity.
Opportunity, yeah. Through events like this, through people's introduction, and then you can, get started. How do we identify partners? Again, there's programs like Accelerator to find, potential partners. But again, it's all more of a serendipity kind of thing. So, you go meet many people, try to find exciting seeds of things, and then things spark from there.
Okay, and next up, Rob.
On the first question, yeah, it's the same thing. It's I'll mention it again, but we have our accelerator is always open for submissions. We also have specific challenges that run through the year. If you're interested in working on some innovations together, you can contact us through that platform, or just in general find somebody even from our local office here with WFP Japan. And the issue is just starting the discussion. I mean, we do need to make a point of contact, and then, as you say, it sparks something, or it doesn't. But at least we've tried, and we're testing each other's kind of mutual objectives.
Thank you very much. And
Okay.
Akita-san?
How do Washa identify partner? I think make something people want is the principle of startups. So to know our end users, the customer need is the first step. Then after that, we know what we need to make. So for example, when we start the e-commerce service, the next step, we found the Rakuten as the main player in Japan. So we applied the social accelerator then 1 year ago. So kind of that. So to know the customer need is the approach. And how just talk to me. Send me message.
That seems to be a key message here between all the panelists. Is we will have time for networking and so on later on, so please do come and talk to these three and other WFP personnel as well. Now I'd like to switch over to the second question, which is for Rob. What are the benefits for Japanese companies to collaborate with local entities, including international organizations?
I think I can answer the first part of the third question as well with the same comments. I think the benefits are a little bit what I've mentioned already, that we have presence on the ground in many countries. We've been there 30, 40, 50 years. We have relationships with the government. We have a position of trust in with stakeholders in that sense. And if you are coming into a country for the first time, you need to have some kind of on-the-ground knowledge. Well, at least you don't need to. I guess I think it helps to. And I think it's really about finding each other's comparative advantages. And then on the third question says, what would be WFP's accelerator strengths and pull factors is, well, we are an accelerator. We're very much like Rakuten Social Accelerator, I imagine. We follow a very standard methodology and process, but the difference with our accelerator over some, not Rakuten, but over some is that we actually have a built-in network right down to 83 different countries. So if you come to us and say, I have an innovation in using artificial intelligence for helping small farmers make planting decisions or something, I mean, we can choose among 45 different countries that might fit that criteria and find a place to do a proof of concept quite easily, actually.
Okay, and that's for both questions. I think you've answered both questions in that answer there.
Sorry, the second part of the third
Sure.
question. I'm sorry, I should be letting you read the
No.
questions. But, okay, why choose WFP among other different opportunities? I would say leave this in terms of where. It depends where you want to work. I mean, we are working for SDG 2, so we're working in the space of food security. And so if you're doing things that are in food security, supply chain optimization, kind of aligned with what we do, then I think that we're a good partner. If you want to work on health programs, you might want to find another partner because it's not what we actually do on the ground. So I would just say it needs to be aligned with our common comparative advantages and interests.
And with that, I'd like to open up to the floor. I believe we have roughly 10 minutes to have any questions from the audience. And you can ask in English or Japanese, preferably English. And if we can make sure it's a question, and also if you could introduce yourself very briefly, just your name and which organization you're from as well. So the gentleman in the front.
Thank you very much for the nice presentation. I'm from Solamitsu Corporation, and my name is Kazu Miyazawa, and we are developing blockchain. And I have a question to Mr. Robert. So, World Economic Forum reported yesterday that more than 40 countries is planning to launch the digital currency near future. And also, they said that Cambodia, especially for Cambodia, they will launch digital currency within this year. And then they will distribute this digital currency using blockchain. It can be used in all population in Cambodia. So actually, our company is working together with National Bank of Cambodia, and then we have been developing together more than 2 years. So somebody said that the blockchain is still under development and also can be used only for the POC, but I said no. So these blockchain technology is already real, and we are working together with Russia Central Stock Exchange and to use a stock exchange system for blockchains, and also we are working together with Indonesia as a digital identity programs. So, we have been visited to Africa many times, but we couldn't find the key players. We are struggling to find people who has a passion. So, is there any way, is a good way to match this technology and the demand? We are the technology provider, so we need very strong partners in local, and also we need a very strong support from WFP, so that we can provide a better solution and improve the life to them. So our products is free of charge because we have already donated to the worldwide non-profit organization. So our products is free of charge, and also the Linux Foundation selected the 3 companies. Intel.
Sorry, just for the sake of time,
Okay.
So just if you can answer the question.
Yeah. So my question is, so what is a good way to find the partners? So we are very ready to provide the products.
Very quickly, well, we'd be interested in speaking further about that. It is not just the World Food Programme. There are other UN agencies and there are other non-profit and public sector players that are all interested in digital identity, digital currency, all the kind of underpinning social systems. So it is definitely something that there are a lot of people interested, but it sounds like you're bringing to the table a lot of very deep expertise, and we would love to speak more about that.
So maybe you can continue that conversation later on.
Okay.
Okay. And any other questions from the floor? Second question. We have one person at the back there. I believe someone will bring you a microphone. And if we can keep questions brief, and also if they're addressed to a certain person, please make that clear.
Thank you very much. We're from Japan. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Thank you very much for a very interesting panel. I really enjoyed it. So this is a question for actually every panelist. So maybe first to Rob. So you mentioned this is your first visit here in Japan. You were very happy to see that Japanese corporation are very focused on SDGs. So I'm just wondering if while you're doing this roadshow, maybe other countries in the world, what do you think that Japanese corporation can learn from other countries and vice versa? And maybe also to Tanaka-san and Akita-san, thank you also both very much for your experience sharing. I think at work you must have encountered also other country startups, and what do you think that we can learn from them or can benchmark with, and then also vice versa? Thank you very much.
So first, Rob.
That's a good question, and I don't want to presume that I know everything about the Japanese industry and market right now after 3 days being here. But I do see, so I see a lot of interest, and there obviously is a lot of presence of Japanese companies internationally already. I guess that I'm just not as familiar, if I compare to let's say, multinational companies that are headquartered in other countries, I don't see quite as much push into the social areas yet. I mean, I feel like maybe Japanese companies are, I don't want to say behind, but just, I guess, not quite as involved yet. And I think that could change very quickly because I think all the ingredients are there. But I do think that there is probably more that can be done in partnering with international organizations and NGOs and things like that on the ground to try proofs of concept and things.
And Tanaka-san and Akita-san?
I believe the question was, what can Japanese companies or startups learn from other startups outside of Japan, right? Okay. So different case by case, but I feel in general that the Japanese startups can be much more pushy. So when I work with foreign startups, like for example Indian companies, I mean they send lots of sometimes random messages, to tell, what the status of the company is. This is what we're working on. We want to do this with you, and that with you, and all sorts of random things. And sometimes it gets annoying, so I wouldn't recommend it to all of you. But basically, getting that flood of information and interest and attention, it kind of naturally pulls you in the direction of you have to do something for this person. This person keeps on asking me lots of things. So generally, Japanese companies tend to kind of stand back a little bit and think, am I troubling this person too much or something like that? But you can really push if you really need the support from large corporates.
So be more pushing is the key message there. And Akita-san?
Same to Tanaka-san, but in addition to that, like they are very open, but then like that's not only startups, also like the companies for example, in Tanzania, there are like some of the big company, but if I send message to the request the meeting, they will squeeze to make time to see us. So they are very open. Then like if I send message to like a Japanese company, sometimes they will answer like we don't have time, or like sometimes they don't reply to us. So be open is the key.
I see. Make more time and be more open. Okay. And with that, we have time for, I believe, 2 or 3 more questions. So next question from the floor. I see someone at the back. Oh, we have someone in the middle here. And over here as well. So we'll go with you first, and then we'll head over here. And I believe someone will bring you a microphone.
Thank you for the talk. I'm also working for a blockchain startup, and we have been developing a platform for some kind of public utilities for the underserved people in developing countries. And actually, I'm right now working on exploration stage to see if the people who lack of access to such kind of like public utilities can actually pay the utility fee if our platform is implemented in the situation. So I was wondering, like, how this kind of initiative by a tech startup can be actually monetized in a long way. Actually, we can find a lot of subsidies and also grants provided by international organizations and so on, but it would be really tough to actually sustain the project. So if you have any comments on that.
Is that for a specific person?
And anyone who can answer.
Yeah, I feel like that's Akita-san.
Monetize is the biggest challenge for sure. Okay, but I think I don't know I'm the right person to answer this one, but in our approach, in our case, at first we started to understand to decide who is our customer. I mean, who can pay for us and how much they can pay, and like what's their challenge? Like, what's the, how can I say, the key point? How can we motivate them to pay us? Because in our case, it's like a 2C business. So in our case, we need to understand like, who is a customer, who can pay, like how much. Then we develop our business model with that, the studies, numbers. So that was our approach.
Okay, so it's about motivating people to, of course, pay for this product or service.
Yes.
Okay. And I think Rob would like to add to that.
Well, yeah, and it's difficult to generalize, but our kind of thinking around this is that it is a function of volume and time. Meaning, I think if I've understood your technology correctly, you're talking about allowing more people to access services by essentially micro-billing, right? Because it's very difficult for people to access gas or electricity tiny bits at a time because that's all they have money for. They can't afford a big monthly bill or whatever. So the issue is to make it commercially sustainable, you're obviously going to need to have a high volume, and then you're going to need to look at the kind of the way that people access those services now, which is usually very sporadically and only once in a while, and whether you can figure out over time how to make sure that those people, by accessing those services, let's say it's electricity or something, are able to do more productivity or economically productive activities. They're raising their incomes. Over time, they should be able to afford and purchase more from the utilities. But that takes patience. And I know you know that, but I think that's why I say it's high volume, and a bit of a patient view or perspective, which I know venture capitalists don't always have a lot of patience. So hopefully there's some patient capital out there.
So patience is the key. And we have time for, I'm going to take 2 more questions. I'm going to take them both at the same time. So we have a gentleman at the front here. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a final question? Last chance? If not, okay, we have another gentleman there. So we'll take both questions at the same time. And please keep them brief if possible.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm from UNHCR Tokyo office. Thank you very much for the presentation. I have a very quick 2 questions. One is about the data protection. All those connectivities are so efficient collecting individual information. Now we are tying the assistance and individual information. I just wonder how WFP is considering this data protection. And another question is about you talk about the innovation bootcamp. I just wonder what is the common feature of surviving this innovation bootcamp? Thank you very much.
Okay, and the gentleman behind.
Hello, excuse me. Another question from UNHCR Tokyo office. Actually, our problem sometimes is that we try to discuss with the Japanese corporate here, and the discussion tends to be on the procurement side. The company has specific items or services that they want us to use on our ground. In that case, the discussion never goes beyond the procurement, the rules and regulation. But we would like to go beyond the discussion to the innovation, but sometimes it really doesn't reach to that stage so easily, because once we start saying like, okay, we would like to discuss with you about the program and to discuss more creative way of solution together, then the corporates rather stepping back, and the discussion doesn't really continue. Do you have any, how do you say, tricks?
Tricks or advice? Okay, and 3 of those questions are all for Rob, is that right? Okay, well, yeah.
I'm happy to share.
Okay.
Okay. On your last question, again, I do not presume to know the Japanese industry well. What I do see in other places where there are sometimes similar issues where companies think the only way to interface with the United Nations is by selling services, and that is certainly a viable option for lots of things. But I think increasingly what we need to demonstrate is that that is ultimately a smaller market for more people than if there's a way of working collaboratively in the field, in the places where we work, because that market is much bigger than what we procure. And so if we can sort of demonstrate that by collaborating collaborating as partners as opposed to vendor and purchaser, and move toward partners looking at a particular context where actually the involvement of a large corporate in developing business models that provide services for people over time, that is beneficial for livelihoods, I think we can start to change the dialogue, I hope. On the question of data protection, that is something, and I know that the High Commissioner for Refugees, for HCR, I know that you have a very strong data protection policy, and we have one as well, which is we fully realize that a lot of the systems that we put in place now, the digital systems, are collecting a massive amount of data. We want to make sure that we're collecting only a minimum amount of data on people so that we're not placing that data at risk of privacy concerns or protection. We have a policy, we have a data protection officer, all of the kinds of things that we, I think, need to have in place. But the fact that the technology is changing so quickly means that we have to be very agile in that way. And one of the things that and it came up a little bit in some of the comments about examples of companies accessing people's smartphones and things, we would be very, very careful about the amount of data that we would want in a partnering in a business model. We would be very uncomfortable in collecting a lot of data that could be personally identifiable, because we work, as you do, with the most vulnerable people in the world, and we cannot afford to treat their data with anything less than maximum protection. And then your question on what's the key to surviving the boot camp? Actually, we have seen over and over again, the key is having a strong team. If the innovations that have a strong team behind them are very obviously more successful than the ones that don't have a strong team. And that is I think the biggest key success factor.
That seems to be an overarching theme of this conversation, is the importance of communication, of people-to-people connections and partnerships. So on that note, I'd like to bring the Q&A to a close. So if we give the panelists a big round of applause, please. And the final closing remarks will be from Rob.
Okay. Kiori will officially close the meeting, but I want to say from my side, thank you very much to Robin for a great moderation of the panel, to our panelists, thank you so much, and for all of you for being here. I wanted to mention just a little bit more about contact details, because a lot of questions have come up about how to reach the World Food Program, the Accelerator, and the team here in Tokyo. So the contacts are here. There are various opportunities. One of the opportunities is to go to the website, innovation.wfp.org. If you're interested in the Accelerator programs, you can make an application through the website at any time. You can also send a specific message to the emails that are there. And that is about inquiring exactly what we heard some of the questions here. I have a company that is doing this in these countries. Is there a way that we can work together? And then we can have a conversation about that. And similarly for large companies who are interested in what we could possibly do in partnerships, we would encourage that kind of contact as well. Also for our Tokyo office representatives, you've met some of them today, and they're all here, so please, in the networking reception after, please take advantage and speak to them, because they can then channel you to any part of the organization, including my team, on how to really partner together. So there are ways to get involved, and as I said before, the Sustainable Development Goals are simply not possible if we don't have these kinds of creative and innovative partnerships. So we encourage you all to become involved in some way with us or others, parts of the UN system, to really work together to end hunger and achieve the other sustainable development goals as well.
Thank you very much. So this is to conclude the seminar, and thank you so much for the panelists and Rob, and thank you. The special thanks to fantastic job, Robin. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And now, before the next.